sell them a couple copies of that, buy all the stuff that I was hoping to buy, and then jet. So that was huge, because I could also find out what was going on. That's how I found Ron Reggie's work. And,
Okay.
got in touch with him early on. He offered encouragement. P. Shaw, who also doesn't get mentioned a lot, but back then was super active in doing things on a really high level, quality-wise, making really intense compilation books of strange stuff, work by people that don't even necessarily make comics, you know. And then John Porcelino, of course. So seeing King Cat, which I'm sure I bought at Million Year Picnic, and then like Jenny was saying in the back, all these addresses of other people.
Yeah.
So then I found Tom Hart and this wider constellation, Strange Growths and all that stuff. So a lot of it was through the mail, like she was saying.
Okay.
And I would send them to people, and I don't know.
Did, like, when was the first time that you like interfaced with any of these people, like in real life? I guess besides Tom, like at the shop.
Well, Ron, when I sent him a package, I remember the letter he sent back was printed on a transparency, and the font was like logs, and it was printed in red on a transparency out of logs, and it was like, I think it just said, "Your work's not bad, keep cracking, kid," or something like that. But it had his phone number, or maybe there was a card in there that had his phone number on it. So when I went to Boston, I just called him, cold called him, and met this other friend of mine that's become a lifelong friend who was homeless, who was just staying at his house.
Oh, wow.
This guy, Jeremy Harris, musician.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
That's how I met Jeremy, because he was staying at Ron's. But so I just cold called Ron, and then my first time in New York, I 411'd Gary Panner.
Whoa.
And it was a studio number, and he answered, and I was just like, "Can I come over?" He was like, "Sure."
Yeah.
So easy.
Holy shit. And then, wait, were you in high school, or?
Yeah, probably still, yeah.
Whoa.
And I brought him a print. I brought him some terrible things I made, and he was very nice about it. And then he had been working on the very early stages of a light show that later would become this thing with Joshua White.
Yeah.
But in that studio, he had set up like all these hanging, I don't know, like dish racks, doilies, like anything with like apertures and holes in it were hung like at all different distances, all different lights, and then multiple screens, and he had like 30 tape decks that were all over the room that he would start independently, and it was just this like panoramic cacophony, and it was just me sitting there and him like, you know, moving stuff around behind the curtain. It was
holy shit.
Fucking mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
You called him and you got a personal performance.
I died.
Yeah. Holy crap. And I was curious, do you remember how you came up with the title?
Low Tide?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. It was from a list of potential titles that was in the letters section of Yummy Fur by Chester Brown.
Okay.
And it was a letter sent in by a cartoonist. I wish maybe Jenny can verify it. It might have been a Jenny Zervakis letter.
Jenny, did you come up with the name Low Tide?
Did you ever write into Yummy Fur? Yeah?
Yeah.
You did or you didn't? Okay, so I think it was your letter.
Wow.
Because, okay. I wish I could remember, but
Yeah. Well, that's a
it
incredible
was a list
coincidence.
of potential names for him,
Would that been a...
which became Underwater.
Oh, okay. Wow. Incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, so just a little context for the audience. I asked a few of our mutual friends for questions too, so I and I will give them credit. So just so it's not like super jarring when I'm like, question from your friend. But Carlos Gonzalez, our friend, who's also an incredible comics artist, performer, video maker, all around inspiring artistic individual. He sent me a question. He said, I thought Chris had an uncle or family member who worked at Marvel who exposed him to a lot of comics. I'm curious about the relationship and its impact on his art.
I do have a cousin. Yeah, he's like, he's a bit older than me. And when I met him when I was very, very young, very, very briefly, he gave me a business card that had Spider-Man on it. I was like, whoa, he works for Marvel.
Whoa.
But there was a rift in the family. So for many, 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 many years, there was no contact with them, no mention of them. And then once, I think Powr Masters was well underway by the time that the family reconnected and I got to hang out with him again.
Oh, wow.
And he lives in New York. We hang out all the time. We just went to see Todd Barry the other day. He's great. But yeah, he's apparently like, you know, early days with Jim Lee and all that stuff. But yeah, he was an editor there.
Wow.
Don Daly. Yeah, really sweet guy. But I didn't learn much from him till much later.
Oh, okay.
The one thing he told me when we did reconnect was, he's like, so I heard you're working on a long series. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, do you have a good ending? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, that's the most important thing. And then it just sent me into a panic spiral that I'm still in to this day.
Oh my God. Wait, so did you show him Powr Masters?
No, I've never shown him anything. I think he's seen it, but I can't do that.
Yeah. Do you show your family your art?
I used to. It's funny because I gave him that stuff, which has all the dirty stuff in it, but which is like at the wrong, you know, shelf height at my sister's and stuff for her kids. I'm like, just put them up there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't give them William Sofkey. I don't know. I'll give them a stack, but my dad subscribed to the monthly subscription, which is a real nightmare.
Does he like give you feedback?
Yeah, he's like, those were interesting. I couldn't really make sense of any of them, but it's going good, you know? But literally every time I make one, I'm like, my dad.
Whoa. Well, okay, I feel like I think I listened to some other interview and you mentioned that your dad had access to a photocopier
Yeah.
at his job. Is that right?
He ran his own business, so he had a small one.
Okay.
And he would make me pay for paper and toner. Because he was like, if you're going to run a business, you have to run a real business, so you have to pay me for all the shit.
Hell yeah.
And then I would respond by, I was reading Underwater by Chester Brown at the time, which has those huge blacked out pages.
Yeah.
So I was just like, all right, cool, a lot of black in this issue, Dad.
Wow. Yeah, that's like an incredible continuity because you have your own Xerox machine.
Finally, yeah.
Now, but that your dad is like ordering your monthly Xerox that he was like helping you produce when you were like a child.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, yeah, I guess, yeah. There's a question from Jacob Berendez. He's the person who put together Mother's News. He's an incredible writer and creative guy. Yeah, all around. He said, what artwork, artist, or situation set you on your path as a young person?
I mean, there's comics answers, but actually the very first thing that came to mind was that in my high school, for art books, they had monographs of famous painters, a few, and then they had one book that was just called modern art or contemporary art. I think it was called, I can't remember. was an inappropriate title like that. And then they had that Rauschenberg sculpture with the goat.
Oh yeah.
With the tire, covered in paint, and also the bed. And they were black and white, like small photos of those things. But I think that was the first time I ever saw art that was just like, whoa, like that's really upside down. Like that's hard.
Yeah.
Like what made you think that was okay? Like that's not okay. You know, like just so hard to understand, and to find it like in this banal kind of setting.
Yeah.
And knowing for a fact that even though it was like shocking me, like this has been accepted by the world, like this is in this like this dud of a little book in my dud of a little town, like I was just like, wow, things must be really fucked up out there, you know? Like I can go crazy.
Little did you know.
Little did I know how boring it actually is.
Did your family take you to art museums when you were younger, or?
No.
Yeah, I was curious about that because I feel like there's a little bit of parallel of our upbringing. I'm from, it's like the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky, basically in the middle of nowhere. I grew up on a farm. There was like not a lot around. So my interactions were all with printed material. I think I only have one memory of like going to an art museum before I was like 16 or 17. But besides this experience with the book in the library, did you have early experiences with art that, I guess, like outside of comics?
I mean, my aunt stenciled botanical type of things onto tins and like perimeters of rooms. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So like she was an example. She also encouraged me to read a lot. But as far as art, capital A, I don't know, yeah, it was something I saw in a book, something that happened in the city, something that happened somewhere else. And it's really hard to get a sense of like how my life could exist in an ongoing way doing that, you know?
Yeah.
But comics made sense.
Yeah.
I think seeing really old newspaper strips too, I would check out at a really young age these big collections of like strips from the 30s and 40s from the library because I had those. And I think the language in those, the kind of jargon and vernacular and slang from many, 100 years ago was kind of interesting because a lot of them are written phonetically in this really crazy way.
Yeah.
The rules are all different, kind of like Jenny was saying, like just not having any preconceived ideas about what a comic is. And they were so new in the US at that point that it's like, where are the word balloons? Are there word balloons? Like, what is the scent? Is this English? And then you're like, oh, I get it. Like, they live in a swamp or whatever. Like Pogo or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think just the appreciation of drawing in that, and that appreciation of mark making too, was just an easy get, looking at paintings and stuff once I did get to a city.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was more about the library.
Right on. And I guess, yeah, along similar lines in the kind of like earlier phase of your work, I guess, it's like, it's such an unknown anthology. I've only ever seen a copy of it once, but I think you put it together in 1999, this anthology called Burning, and it's pre-Paper Rodeo, but it's published under, I think you had a press.
That's like, yeah, the high school.
Yes,
Starving Artist Press.
Yeah.
Because my parents would always say, you're going to be a starving artist. And they were right. You got Ron Rigi to do the cover. It has your work in it, Brian Chippendale, Matt Brinkman. There's a bunch of other people, contemporaries of the moment. And the first page just has a big hole burned into it. And then there's a match that I think is not burned.
that's taped
Yeah,
onto
there's a
it.
freshie in there, yeah.
It's very like conceptual. Like it was a bit startling seeing the book because I was like, this is so like heady in a way. It's called Burning, and there's a match that you can light, and also one of the pages has a big fucking hole burnt in the middle of it. I just like, I just wanted to hear you talk about that, putting that book together, and like, how did that come about?
I don't know. I mean, I was a teenager. I admired everybody in the book very much, and it's just a transparent way of inserting myself into that. Book your favorite bands and book yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that. But I think I just wanted to read people's stuff so badly, and it was so rare and so precious that I was like, if I just offer to print it, maybe I'll be able to read a new 6-page Chippendale story or something. You know?
Yeah.
And then I thought it should have a theme to make it easier, and I thought that was open-ended enough. And then I thought maybe I'll do another one, and they could be elemental or something like that.
How were you like in touch with those people at that time? I feel like now it's just like people are like shooting emails, texts, and it's just like that's not the way it was.
That's true. I don't think I even had a computer or an email address then. I had gone to Fort Thunder because once I moved to Boston, I worked at Million Year Picnic, and they had a flyer. They were buying prints from Fort Thunder, and I lucked out in that they had bought some that were for shows that hadn't happened yet. So they had this flyer for a Halloween show there, which was the first one I went to. So I met them in person that way.
Okay.
And I had their phone number. They had like one landline for all of Fort Thunder had one phone. So I had the phone, and I would just call sometimes and be like, hey, I'm like 19, you know, like I'm gonna do this thing, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of like breaking my mind. Incredible. So would you have to be like, be like, hey, is like so-and-so home?
Yes.
And you didn't always know their real names.
Oh.
Jim Drain was Gorgon Radio.
Yeah, is Gorgon Radio at
Yeah,
home?
and Leaf Goldberg was like, I don't know, Goldbug or something. You like, is
Yeah.
Gorgon there?
Incredible.
Yeah.
I found that there's not much evidence of this anthology burning. There's like not much evidence of it online, but there's like a university's archive that has a post about it, and they're talking about how they I guess they were scared it was going to burn all the other books down because of the live match on the front page.
Somebody told me about this, I think.
So they, in their like archives, they
de-weaponize the
Yeah,
match.
they de-weaponize the match so that it can be a permanent fixture of the collection without causing harm.
Because I think it was a strike anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You want to brush your sleeve against that.
And yeah, I guess this is kind of like a jump in the continuity of your work, but it's one of, I guess, the earlier comics of yours that I saw, and I feel like I've just never heard you talk about it. It was like super curious how it came about, but the Batman bootleg comic, I think that was like 2005.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just a weird thing with Ben Jones at the time. He would do versions, you know?
Yeah.
Like dub versions. You know, he'd do like, this is my Muppet Babies or whatever.
Yeah.
He also he just had a really weird, interesting perspective that like wasn't a one-to-one. Like, he would be really inspiring, but all of his ideas were not things I could do in my own work. But like, he did a comic called Alfie the Comic Book the Movie.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be like a comic version of the movie that he was like imagining that didn't exist or something. Yeah, so I don't know. I think we were just fucking around with Dan sitting one day, and we were like, we should do a Batman thing. And he's like, I'll publish it. And we're like, well, what's it gonna be like? It'll be like, oh, newsprint, purple ink, whatever. I think that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you all go your separate ways and you completed your Batman comics separately, or?
I don't remember. We probably drew a little bit of it together.
Okay.
In the same room. We probably did, yeah.
Right on, right on. Yeah, it's just, I feel like it's such a unique and bizarre thing, and I don't think your all's names are on it. It's one of those things that's like anonymous, and it's like for legality, you couldn't buy it. Exactly. It was a free newspaper.
I think.
Bootleg.
I don't remember how it worked. It was just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. And I think, one of the first times I encountered you, I think it was after the release of the first Powr Masters, and then this was at SPX. I'll bring them all back. This was SPX 2007. Then you came back to Baltimore to play a show. Inexplicably, there's just these zines on the table called Fantasy Empire.
Oh yeah.
I've just never heard you actually talk about it. I'm so curious, and I guess I'll just kind of explain it. But Christopher it's like a series of, they're mini comic size. They're anonymous. They don't unless people recognize your handwriting, because they are mostly devoid of your drawings.
Yeah.
With these little mini comics, it's mostly found material, but I think there's 13 volumes of it. It's quite an expansive project. But how did Fantasy Empire come about?
I don't know. That was a period where I was living with Carlos Gonzalez. We lived in a huge warehouse. My rent was $90 a month. We just had stacks of Gorzone and Fangoria everywhere. We were plumbing the depths of Italian horror and just watching every fucked up VHS we could or something, and just really involved in discovering that stuff, really immersed in it. And I think at the same time was beginning to build synths and stuff. So I had all these weird books and things about that. And it was before online image sharing. It was before Flickr or whatever was before that, you know. Mm-hmm. Certainly no social media at that point. So it was just a way to collate and cherish bits and pieces of things that I liked and then make them available for friends. I think they were 50 cents or something.
Yeah.
It was kind of an absurd price. I stole all the copies. And I made a lot of them because they were pretty easy to make.
Yeah. It's the only comic of yours that I've found in a dollar bin, just in a mainstream
awesome
comic book store.
That rules. Yeah. It's funny to think that they're still floating around there.
They're out there. Yeah. Well,
I've got one right here. I didn't know it was you.
That's fucked up.
For the purposes of the recording, Chris Pitzer just held up a copy of Fantasy Empire, and he's trying to sell it. He's I guess you probably just jacked the price up on that.
It's got to be 75 cents by now.
But the name Fantasy Empire, that's from a Doctor Who magazine, maybe, or
yeah.
Is that right?
I think it is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I
I
forgot, but that's true.
I shamefully have to admit I'm not versed in Doctor Who, but are you?
There's one era, the Tom Baker era, the Fourth Doctor.
Okay.
That's the only Doctor Who I've ever watched, and I love it a lot. Yeah.
Incredible.
Mostly just because of him, I guess. And the props are beautiful, the sounds are beautiful. BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Delia Derbyshire made the intro. Just genius tape manipulation and amazing.
I'm gonna have to check it out. And yeah, I guess I was also, because I think Ryan Holmberg is still here, maybe. Yeah. I feel like you're the first American artist, to my knowledge, to actually make work in response to Suge, which I just thought it'd be interesting to ask, like how you saw his work. I feel like Core of Caligula, I'm pretty sure
I did write his name.
you straight
there.
up write
That's
thanks
true. I
Suge
forgot about
on the front
that.
page.
Well, I saw Screw Style printed in the Comics Journal, like a lot of people. Neshijiki, maybe you say it. Yeah, I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. That just like changed my life. And then I went on a trip to Japan and I got a set of his works. And then I begged a friend of mine to help me translate some of the stories. And then I made a bootleg of one of them called The Boring Room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That stuff's really advanced. And we were just talking about, Brian and I were talking about yesterday, how insane it is, like that, you know, that work is old.
Yeah.
And how, I mean, it's still, of course, like very, I don't know, futuristic is not the word, but it's very forward-looking, it's very advanced, it's very, just so far beyond
Yeah.
so many things. And just that, even the awareness of that has been kept from here, and like the whole like history here of comics is very different.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like stunted or, you know, any bad words, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Totally.
So I mean, I still suffer under just thinking about the bottomless well of unknown beauty that we can't read and we're not even aware of. So, but I think the quietness and the desolation and the kind of inconsolable qualities of his work, and that like Beckett, like I can't go on, I will go on,
Yeah.
kind of thing, really struck me. And it's so not, it's not aggressive, but it just is poking holes in like everything. I don't know. It's yeah. I can't talk. I love him. Yeah.
And then I was also going to ask, because I can't remember which comic, but I feel like, or maybe one of your zines, there's some like clippings of Umez, perhaps, or maybe a tape.
There's a zine
Kazuo.
called Second Stage Spiel that has some cuts. Yeah. in there.
Yeah. How did you first find Kazuo Umezu's work?
I don't know. I was hunting hard in those days, and actually, like, there was this cutout store called Symposium in Providence that would get unsold books from other bookstores. So when people first started reprinting that, or like Hideshi Hino or somebody like that, I feel like people were not really having it so much back then, so they were pretty easy to get. Like they were like at this store a lot, so I got a lot of good stuff there.
Right on. So yeah, I feel like from my Catholic upbringing, I have to just offer a moment. And I'm also a fan of comic swipes. Hopefully you all know what that is when someone swipes something, but are there any swipes that you would like to confess?
Oh, shit. That's a really good question. No, I never swipe. I never use models. I never use photo references. There's one page in the strip Dominion Ambulance that's in that book that Leomi colored, actually.
Oh yeah.
And on the back, I confessed. I said that I used photo references. I said photo references used. But no swipes. And then there was Roy Crane. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Roy Crane, wow. I had a notebook where I was just drawing Roy Crane, but I never used it for anything.
Okay.
Those notebooks are so sad because you'll flip through and you'll be like, this stuff is great. but it's like bad versions of something. Yeah.
Incredible. Let's see. Leonie Sadler, our friend and artist, she makes comics and graphics and all sorts of. She's like a burning ball of energy, and she works really fast.
Very
like
powerful.
shockingly fast. Very powerful person. She sent me some questions. She was curious, what are your limits of editing, and do you redraw much?
Also, that's a good question too. Editing is the big problem, like Dash was talking about. And then a modular approach, like the Chester Brown thing, is kind of the only way that I've thought of too to edit. I know that Nabokov wrote in a parked car using index cards to be away from everyone. And then also to have this kind of, there's no implication of a page yet, you know? There's only the fragments, everything's mutable. But then, as Gabrielle was saying, or Dash was saying this too, but like when you're gathering all these things together, it can kind of take forever as well. You might think it's gonna speed things up for you a bit, but it can make it worse. But editing is a big problem. I think when I was younger, I considered each page a work or something, you know? Mm-hmm. And I had really strong feelings about like everything should happen on the page. But can you read her question again? Because the wording.
She said, what are your limits of editing, and do you redraw much?
Right. I mean, I redraw a lot when I'm drawing. I draw in pencil. But then a few years ago, I started drawing in ink, which is like radically different. So those are two really different processes. If you consider like redrawing the same hand 6 times, then there's a limit there.
Yeah, yeah. When you're doing the ink, do you use whiteout?
No, never, no.
Okay.
That's the thing. So the ink is like, it is, you know? And then the pencil, you celebrate the pencil, so.
Yeah. To kind of tie into the question, I feel like I've noticed, I think maybe your comics since 2020, you'll occasionally use a computer to like maybe draw the panel lines or replicate an image where it's like, I feel like your work prior was very much about the physicality of like, this is a pencil drawing or this is an ink drawing, kind of the way you were just describing, but there's been this introduction to using the computer and the creative process. How did you come to that point?
I think it was just different inspirations. Like early on, I wanted raw scans. Mm-hmm. I would like fight people, don't clean the scans, you know. I mean, the wrinkles, I was like using crappy paper and watercolor, so they're like full of shadows and just terrible for anybody that I'm working with. But I wanted it just to be like a photo of this thing, and almost like the real thing is these pages that are somewhere else or something.
Okay.
And then I think it was editing that made me start using the computer more, the desire to work with the story in a more comprehensive way where I'd have more control and more say at different points and telling the story out of order, building the story out of order, sliding things around. So that's when those very thin like computer box. Because I also just like this idea of like a form, and I think the drawings can look more excruciatingly ugly or wild or whatever when they're fenced off in these really neat kind of clean containers.
Yeah.
That's really appealing to me. And I think just the formalism of comics in general, like the geometric shapes of the panels and the, you know, rhythmic feeling of moving through those things has always been part of the appeal too, so it's too good not to try. But I still do both.
Right on.
It's more of an ink thing.
Another question from Jacob Brendez. He asks, does your work in origami and comics inform each other?
They both use paper. So in that way you could say that's the material. You could call a book a sculpture, I guess. I don't think so, no. I mean, I guess there's a similarity conceptually in that some of the comics have dimensional folding as part of the idea, or something that is much bigger that's been kind of cleverly compressed into some space, hidden away, or something that was hidden away that comes out. Because origami is exciting because of the dimensional shifting. You start by preparing the paper, usually with some kind of grid, or what I'm doing, usually you begin with some kind of grid. And you score the paper and you kind of program it. And then sometimes it will almost like fold itself once you begin to assemble it. If all the mountain and valley folds are where they are, it'll kind of begin to like form itself. And I really like this idea of this drawing on this paper that is not made with pencil. It's made like with the paper, by the paper being damaged, really. And then from that damage, this thing that has two dimensions like lifts itself up and switches into the third dimension. Like, if we could do that, I don't know what you do, DMT or something maybe is the answer. But yeah.
Incredible. So I think we're about 10 minutes out. Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience if anyone has any thoughts, questions. I'll come down to you with the mic.
Hello. So I'm going to ask this as someone who I got my start off doing projects with Dan Nadell in PictureBox. So that's how I knew about your work first. But maybe can I get you to say a few words about how you felt, what the impact of working with PictureBox was at the time, but also maybe how you feel like reverberations have been of what PictureBox's project was since for your practice? Because
Sure.
it's meant a lot to me.
Sure, yeah. Well, at the time there was some interest in the types of stuff I was doing, or in, other people in Providence and stuff. There was something a little bit new happening, and there were people that were interested in publishing it maybe, like Sammy, Alvin Buenaventura, and Dan. And there was this kind of moment where I knew I was working on Powr Mastrs, so I was like, I have this book, potentially. And then different people were offering to work on it. I think I liked Dan because he just seemed really down to earth, and he was very proactive. He came to visit, and the questions he asked me about what I liked were totally unlike. He was like, "Oh, you must love Joseph Beuys," like he was just coming from a totally different place. And at the time, I lived in this warehouse where no internet, no phone, no landline. I had a P.O. box downtown, and then there was a payphone. This is like 2 or 3 years I lived this way. There was a payphone across the street that I would use if I wanted to make a call. So it was a very isolated lifestyle, like urban hermit. But we planned a call somehow. And I remember talking to him on the payphone, and I was really mean to him. I was like, "Why do you want to do this book? Like, convince me." And he was like, "I just like the way you put those panels together, man." Like, he was like really gentle. So for some reason, I was like, I trust this guy. And then he just looking back on it, he was so patient with me. Like, I just had no idea what was involved in the risks that he was taking. I had no idea of all the legwork it takes to produce a book, everything had to be my way, total prima donna, brat, so annoying, I'm sure so annoying to work with. But I think we just quickly built trust and respect, and I began to understand more like who he was, how he was operating, where he was coming from, again, like what kinds of risks he was taking doing that. You know, I was taking risks and being experimental, but so was he, you know? And the more things that he published and the more time we spent together and the more conversations we had where I began to see how he was looking at things, I really began to feel like, oh, this is my comrade. Like, this is someone that, this is the ideal person for me to work with. And as time went on, that feeling never changed and only intensified. I remember I had a show at this gallery in LA that I won't name. And it was hard to get the work back. It was hard to communicate with them. I'm trying to get this stuff back. Other people want to buy it. And they're like, we sent it. So then they're like, I guess it got lost in the mail. So then they sent me the insurance money, which was great because it was like the whole show had sold out, you know? But kind of sad because you're like, oh, all these drawings are gone. So then Ben Jones was there some months later and he was in their back room and he sees in the flat file all of my work. So he tells me, and I tell Dan, and he's like, oh, well, I'm gonna be in LA next week with Sammy. We'll go there together and we'll stare her down and we'll get your shit. We're gonna go in there and take your shit. And I was like, bring a baseball bat, you know? And they did it. They went to this lady's gallery. They were like, we know you have this work, give it to us. She gave it to them. He returned it to me. It was like amazing. So like on that level, you know? And then once he stopped, as the years went on and that hole kind of opened up where, you know, other publishers are doing interesting things, other publishers have a vision, of course, but Picturebox, I think, was really unique in the way that they could straddle design and art and comics and even comics criticism and kind of have all those things coexisting without it feeling uncomfortable or forced or too much too soon or anything like that. It was very present, very smart without trying to show off or impress people, just really trying to make something that should happen, that needs to happen, that hasn't happened and is not going to happen unless Dan does it, you know? So, nothing but good things to say about him.
Do we have any other questions?
Yesterday we were talking about like when you're in a money lull and you're like, oh, I can just like make this zine. And so I was kind of, and then you know, you sell it, you put them online. I'm immediately ordering 2 copies for me and my friend. And so you have, you know, you just got at least $20 for me, and so you can eat one more meal. But I was curious just about how that pressure or like that like immediacy. I think your work always has such an immediacy that feels like maybe like, you know, some of the best comics you've done have been probably drawn in a time that would blow my mind. And that I was curious about how that like influenced into your work and today and maybe just over time.
Yeah, well, I think comics are interesting in that way in general because they're essentially an industrial art, or that's how it began. Or Ernie Bushmiller looking through the Sears and Roebuck catalog for strange drawings that became the punchlines that he would reverse engineer into the strip. And the people that are drawing the Sears and Roebuck catalog are like a hair's breadth away from Bushmiller. They're all trained illustrators. They're all have to draw whatever, whenever, quickly. And even Kirby will say, you know, I was motivated to make sales. And he was drawing 6 books a month or whatever. Manga artists are no different. So it's an industry, it shouldn't be too precious. And I think the speed of it is interesting, or it's part of it. Like Dave Sims said, I can't believe we mentioned him twice in this thing, but I love Cerebus, don't get me wrong, all the other stuff aside. But he said first you get good, then you get fast, then you get good and fast. Which has haunted me. I don't even know if that's true, because I never got good, I never got fast, and I'm definitely not good and fast. I think the necessity of making a living putting pressure on your work to do that is not necessarily a good thing. The way I live now, where it barely works, but it works, well, it's like if you're not drawing all the time, you're gonna get sick, like emotionally and spiritually anyway. So like if I stop drawing, or if I'm not drawing, things go really wrong. Like things get bad and my life sort of falls apart. So I think in general I have to be drawing, and then I have to print the drawings. I don't know, I'm giving you the worst answer. I have to draw, and I have to print the drawings. It's a part of it, yeah. And like Gabrielle said, you know, the greatest thing about it is like you draw it, you print it, and then you move on. You're always in a state of failure, and you're always in the state of your eyes opening wider, which means that there's always a level of disappointment or something, or feeling that there's something wrong still, and you have to go back out to the woods to try to find something to cure that disease or something. And you know, the money situation, it's a spooky setup down here with nature, and you know, the one thing chasing after another and eating it, and it's creepy. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
Probably an annoying question, but I'm wondering about the Powr Mastrs 4. There was that little sample, but it seems like it's different sections, kind of. How was that like all that you did for the book, or was that just?
There's a good chunk of it done now, actually. But yeah, the plan for that is to have the whole series finished before 4 comes out. So Fantagraphics is doing them. There's other people in other countries that are going to do them. But when 4, 5, 6 come out, they'll reprint 1, 2, and 3. So essentially the idea is that when it'll be done, the whole thing will come out. And the 4, 5, 6, however they come out, and whatever, I don't know, 1 a year or whatever they decide to do. But I want the whole thing to be done so that there's no delays. Once it starts up, there won't be delays between the books, is the idea. But there's lots of work to do on it still. But I haven't given up on it. It exists. It will exist.
Incredible. Well, yeah, before we end, Distant Ruptures coming out from New York Review Books. This is slated for the fall.
October 29th.
October 29th. It's a collection of Christopher's early works. I think it's, dated 2000 to 2010. So look out for that. William Sofkey is currently available from Anthology
And then
Editions.
I'm making the sequel to that, which is called Gymnasium,
Oh, yeah.
which will probably be out, I don't know, Christmas or maybe the spring.
Hell yeah. And then, we have the 2 facsimile reprints of Low Tide. If anyone, we have some copies of that here, if anyone's interested in. I don't think those are reprinted in the Distant Ruptures.
No.
Yeah, so if you're holding out because you want to see if that's in that,
It's not in there.
yeah, you're mistaken. Once again, let's give a round of applause for Brian and Christopher. It's been an incredible event. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks everyone so much for coming. We have to be out of here in like an hour, so you have time to buy some comics. You know, there's still stuff from Jenny, Dad.